And welcome everyone to another Between Two Wheels podcast episode. I am your host, Tyler Janke, episode 173. And what's going on today's show? Today's show, we talk about, is cycling a cult? The Semper Poro expedition. Netflix watching Spanish cycling. Is it a thing now? I don't know. We'll talk about that. Some World Tour news, some things that make you go, some snitching on bicyclists. We'll talk about that. And who is leading the very individual South Canal Time Trial Series, all coming up. Stay tuned. We've got a packed show. And we are back, everybody. I hope everyone is doing fine. I hope you're getting some time to get out to the beach. No, I guess that's not allowed. So we're basically confined in here. We're going to talk about some cycling. Last week we talked to Jason Graffath, the very individual time trial, South Canal Time Trial Series. I thought that went pretty well, and there's some interesting things that came about from there. And one of those is Tyler can't time trial, or can he? So we'll talk about that. We're going to look at last week's very individual private canal time trial and what took place from there. We went over the results on that. I thought I'd just throw up here real quickly. Maybe we can look at what the actual route was last week. It was a short 1 kilometer, 0.64 miles. The actual Matthew Axford actually got the KOM after the whole situation. I don't know how he accomplished that, if he did that with someone else, but he put in a 1:08 on the time, getting that there, and, good for him. How would he do on the actual time trial? So this next week, we had a little bit of a different situation. It was going to be the last week was a power only. Then this week we were going to do more than power. We're going to do actually a 6 mile time trial. And with the 6 mile time trial, you had to do a few things. There's, as you can see in here, there's a few bumps going in there. There's a little kick up partial, I don't know, about a third of the way through. There's 3 kickers. And then from there on, it just kind of was more of a slog. And some people went out. I looked at the results. Jason Graffath went out early in the morning. He put up like a 15.5-minute time, and not too big of a time as far as you kind of had to do Mercs only. Not too big of a actual, what do you want to say? Speed. He wasn't doing a great turn of speed out there, and I think he might have hit some wind. So I show up out there, I don't know, 1 o'clock or so. I rode from my house, rode out there, got a good warm up, and then proceeded to put this down. And I was feeling really good. I did miss time in just a tad bit, where my clock said the 6 miles was up, and I was pushing, kind of peaking for that spot, but it was up the road a little way. So I had like 0.4 of a mile, still had to go. And I put up a 14:12. At the time, there was another 14:12, so I kind of pegged that guy. But by the time I got home, Chris Flower, who I saw out there when I was riding, he had put up a 49 or so. And then Jason Graffath decided to come back out, brave the cooler non-wind environment, and put up himself a 13:39. And then Rich Hufford, I think, put in a 13:40. So it was Rich Hufford, or Jason Graffath at a 13:39, Rich Hufford at a 13:40. I want to say Chris Flower 13:42, perhaps 13:49. And then Dorso, myself, tied for 4th at 14:12, and a few other guys mixed in there. So it was a good, like, it was 6 miles. It was interesting to see. It's so interesting to see the power differentials. I mean, I did like, I think it was like running on my power training peaks, like 330 watts average for that. The guys are putting up much higher numbers than that, but they're, a little bigger guys. I'm not the biggest. John Novikov, I beat him by 6 seconds? Amazingly so. I don't know how that happened. So he should be a little embarrassed, John Novikov, that is, and a few others, that I was able to put up a time anywhere near the top of that. And I think we had a good participation, somewhere in 60 or so. So a lot of good guys coming out there. The KOM for that segment actually is Jason Griffith at 11 minutes and 21 seconds. I doubt that was solo because that's somewhere around close to 30 miles an hour. Now, it depends on the wind. So, we were checking the wind. The wind was coming this way, it was coming that way. And when I rode it, I was like, okay, it feels like a little bit of headwind kind of coming from the right. But then when I'm riding back, I'm like, well, this feels like a headwind as well. So it was interesting. I think next week, trying to make a decision, but I think we're going to go the opposite direction. So you're going to actually go from the south up to the north. That would have been a good weather wind situation for us on this one. But this next week, it's going to be turned around a little bit. So I don't know. Jason's like, maybe we'll do a full out and back. I don't really care. I did enjoy doing a Merck style time trial on this. Partly, I don't get in the best position on my time trial bike, so it's a little bit better. And so, with that said, maybe there's a little bit more of advantage for me on that, and I could also pound up those little climbs. So next week though is a power test. I think it's 3 kilometers. A little bit of a power test for everyone, similar to like we had last week. Look, people, I've seen now out in other places, some other people, not because they initially saw this, but Ron Chavak mentioned that there's something in Belgium that he's out there doing. I think somewhere in the Bay and Reno area, they're doing a few of these things. So interesting, and I'm all for it. Get outside, go do some riding. I think that's the best thing for you, no matter what your authorities are telling you. Yes, am I a scofflaw? Maybe. But it looks like to me, some of the best things you can do is actually get out and ride your bike. I don't know if you need to be in groups. Should we talk about that? I've seen online where some people were out doing some group riding, and some people decided to call them out, not only just social shame them, list them out, calling out their Strava. Who's up for that? Who's not up for that? Not a big fan myself, but hey, if you want to do that, I guess more power to you. Kind of says something about who you are. If you're, is it a snitch? Possibly. It's weird to me that people feel it necessary. I know this has gone on throughout history. There's rules in place. People need to be reported. Anne Frank wrote a whole book about it, didn't she, Don? About people snitching on people like that. Maybe I'm a little too extreme. So be it. I'm a little bit more into what I would say is voluntarism, and people doing what they want to do when they want to do it. So the South Canal time trial, we have the next one coming up is next week, next Thursday. What's that, like 5th or so? Maybe it's the 7th. No, it can't be 5th or so. So that'll be interesting to see how that one goes, which way in direction we're going to go. And for me, it will be interesting to see if I'm anywhere near rode as good as I did this last week, because my legs felt great. They felt fantastic. I was able to hammer. I don't usually do that in time trials. So it was something that for me was kind of, I don't know about unexpected, but it was definitely a unique experience for me. All right. So some of you out there, you may know the Semper Poro team. And there was a blog post by this gentleman, Jack Newald. I don't know if that's exactly who it is, but he looks like he comes from the Midwest. And he had some experience with some of these Semper Poro riders. The link went out, and then it was kind of removed. I got a link, kind of an archived web cache link on it. And the title of the article is somewhat interesting. It's Bike Racing Killed Me, or Tried to Kill Me, the strange story of Semper Poro. So what's kind of fascinating about that is that, look, this Semper Poro, mostly Southern California. They've got Jason Polson, who rides in the Bay Area. He's a young sprinter. He's been with them. They had a few other riders. They had, we can go through, kind of list out some of the guys here by name. And this is Zavalov. He did well, I think, at Chico a few years ago. The whole team did well at Chico a few years ago. As a Jason Paulson. Corey Lockwood, I think that's who is it Corey? I think so. Lockwood was with them. He's a very good time trialer, and then he ended up winning U.S. Nationals, and kind of their main thing. But they have some interesting, so like this article is very interesting. And if someone has some personal knowledge, maybe has a connection with Justin Paulson, you'd like to have me contact me and would like to be in charge. I know there's someone else out there, Matt, perhaps had a connection. Maybe we'd like to do a discussion about this. It's found it somewhat. Look, I've got a few problems with this. It lists a lot of these people. This writer, I think he's a Cat 1 out in the Midwest of Wisconsin area. He seems to know what he's talking about. But part of the problem you see this is there's a lot of context. There's a lot of details in the story, and there's no quotes of this person said this. This person said this. It's just, hey, Jason and this other writer were living in this guy's roof or attic, and this person was doing this, and this guy did this and this. No one is quoted. I mean, there's some things about the domestic violence that it sounds like he might have got a police report. Perfectly fine. And as an attorney, I'm just a little bit skeptical all the time. It doesn't mean I don't believe that this story happened. I mean, there's definitely a lot of it here near you. Like, yeah, it sounds pretty legit. But I always am concerned about reading a story that has this lovely narrative, Phil Gaiman, and there's nothing that backs it up. Or when you look into it further, you're like, are you making this up? I mean, it's really, really easy to just write something and say, and not quote anybody, and then, have a wonderful story, but nothing backing it up. So someone asks, well, is this a libel situation where, you can be defamation? Look, one of the greatest defenses to libel is truth. So if you're, out here publishing, and look, I did a defamation thing about Phil Gaiman, and was there a defamation that he actually has a suit or that Cancelara may have had against him? It's very tough to prove that kind of thing. But the point is that you have to publish it to a third party. So here it is published online. And do we actually have a possibility for libel? Libel being the written word, slander being the spoken word. So in this case, it would be libel. It's written up there, unless you wanted me to read it out here, and then we can have that. But the problem you have is, like I said, if it comes out and then you go to court over this, and you're able to bring those people in, and they're saying, "Yep, this is what happened. Yep, this is what happened." Well, then you've got the truth. Truth is a great defense to all of that. But what were some of the situations you had here? Well, you have this coach. He's got a unique idea in unconventional training, unconventional riding positions for these people. And one thing I noticed is some young guys. Cycling is unique, maybe not unique, because you had a much more sorted situation with Olympics and gymnasts a few years ago, where the coach was basically molesting these young girls. And he takes them into his care. It's an amazing trainer, and they're getting, world competition, and then he's molesting them. It's a horrible situation. Now, they didn't say anything here that these cyclists are being molested, but it's definitely a situation where you are having these riders with not much of anything. They don't really have a prospect for cycling as far as career. They're kind of in that low bottom totem pole for pro, and they don't really get paid anything. So they're willing to glom on to some hope. And you've got some weird training plans. These guys are willing to take this idea. But one of the things they had them do here, which is totally against public policy, but it would be they have the athletes sign a lifetime contract. Must be 18 to 19 or current professional. ProPath, which was the company, athletes sign a lifetime contract with Semper Poro, required to move to North San Diego County. Okay, then there's a lot of just stuff with, he has weird nutritional advice, his life coaching, and then they say they want to compare it to that of a cult. One thing you do notice here is a very big lack of parental / other adult involvement in these kids' lives. Or I'm not saying that these kids don't have it, but there's nothing mentioned in here. It talks about Jason Paulson, 17 at the time, getting this contract and moving down in San Diego and racing for this team. And then they withdraw him from, kind of a life in general, and take his social media away, his phone away, and all these little things that they do. If that's happening to my kid, no, that's not happening to my kid. One, the way I've brought my kids up, but two, and look, that's not a hit on Jason and Justin at all. That's just, then you've got a problem of why are these parents not involved? I mean, if that's, once again, happening with my kid, I'm going to be down there and involved and having some conversation. A little bit different, though. I mean, if you're a parent and you don't really know about the cycling world, and, look, one of your aspects of you're almost proud of your lack of weight and how skinny you can be. That's probably unhealthy in most situations. But when it comes to cycling, it's different. So a parent may not really understand, look, don't you want to bulk up for, football? And no, I'm into cycling. And then you want to get thin and you don't want any upper body, blah, blah, blah. It's a different aspect if you're not really part of that. So members, they were encouraged or required to live and socialize with other group members. It was all this big time, down in the one thing, Lockwood, I guess he didn't want his girlfriend was being coached by the same guy, Italia, and then Paulson wasn't allowed to date certain people. They were going over who he can date because it was all specific and control by their. Now, do I think it was a cult? I don't really think so. I think you're taking a lot of agency away from each of these riders. I mean, Lockwood ended up quitting the team after this incident in Cascade Classic, and where it looked like maybe he had wrecked out part of the field, being upset, and then the team didn't back him up. There's some weirdness there. If you've ever watched this guy's videos online too, I subscribe to their YouTube account. Pretty good videos, a little strange. He came across as pretty, interesting. One of the really weird things was some of the, and all of this, once again, it's one-sided. It's, there's a quote here as an example. Italia used body work as a blanket term for manual therapy he would perform on his athletes, mainly chiropractic and massage. Both require a license in San Diego. Italia wasn't licensed in either. He would perform deep tissue massage his athletes, which consisted of high pressure massage using his elbow on their muscles. Italia told his athletes this type of massage would be, quote, the most painful thing you will ever experience in your life. Well, how did you get that quote? And also, just because he's not licensed, I'm sorry, I know licensing is a big deal to a lot of people. It means that suddenly that person is qualified beyond repute. I give massages to my kids, my family, my wife, especially my dad. You can be talented and do good something like this, cut hair, what have you, without a special license. But if you, as an example, practice law without a license, you can be, I've read this one guy. He's now an attorney, but he was in prison. Okay. And while he was in prison, he started to write briefs for other, he was a prison attorney, so to speak. He would start helping other people write briefs, helping them with their cases. He had no law experience. He had no education in it. But he wrote one that was so exceptional, it actually got quoted up with one of the writs with the Supreme Court. So now the guy ends up getting out of prison, whatever, and he ends up getting a law license, and he's a very exceptional attorney. So, he supposedly practiced law without a license at that point, but it doesn't mean you can't be talented. My point is, simply because you don't have a license to massage, you don't have a license to be a coaching business or whatever, doesn't mean you aren't, there's something nefarious going on. With that said, he was at one point, Paulson was frequent recipient of body work. And in a video, Italia claimed his muscles were made of garbage. That's Justin's, that is, from eating fast food as a child. On one occasion, he caused a contusion to Paulson's leg, making it difficult for him to walk, pedal the bike. The injury took days to heal, but Italia called it progress since he was helping him revamp the muscle. Okay, so that to me is pretty egregious and probably not something that could be an accidental thing. I'm not trying to give him the benefit of the doubt necessarily, but look, the point of all this is I'd like a little bit, once again, the next few things here. In the there's just quotes all over the place, but it doesn't say what this is in reference to. Italia didn't make any of his athletes do anything. He would just frame every decision as, quote, this is what you'll do if you're serious, unquote. Athletes who didn't obey his suggestions would not be given his revered training tools. Yeah, once again, a quote, not really that. I think this article is a little over the top on calling him a cult leader. He ends up later on having a dual, he has an open marriage, and his girlfriend's kind of part of a problem too. One of the kids is living with the girlfriend. She has a dog business. They're supposed to be helping. I mean, they're just kind of using these cyclists as slaves in a sense. But once again, I think you have a problem with agency. Each, these are adult kids or adult, males. They can do what they want, but then in the same respect, they're following down the guidelines of this coach, and coach starts having success, and it breeds to all this stuff. Semper Poro, it looks like it's no longer. He ended up abusing his girlfriend. There was a domestic violence thing. There, maybe even the wife. He seems like he's a troublemaker. Why does cycling get these kind? You had the guy. It's just what was the rock racing? I mean, that guy was a ball. He was a bit of a nut job. You've got Tinkoff. He's a bit of a nut job. I don't know. I'm not necessarily saying that they're all kind of these cult leader types, but for the main point, some weirdness in here. Anyway, I would maybe suggest I'll link to this cached article here, and you can take a look at it for yourself. It's pretty good. Once again, it's just giving you an idea. Hey, here's this, but maybe take a look at it yourself. And if someone out there has a connection with one of these guys, maybe I'd like to give them a thing. Rumor has it Justin Polson is going to be going with ButcherBox. ButcherBox, by the way, a great source during these coronavirus stay-at-home times, delivering meat directly to your door. We subscribe, and I'm not suggesting you do, because if you do, we maybe won't have the opportunities to continue getting the food ourselves. How about in the World Tour? Look, the World Tour, you've got, I don't know what's going on with the cycling world as far as the Tour de France now. Evidently, it's still on. It's not on. Is it going to start in January in Australia? Maybe, I don't know. What's the news? Let's just go and read the news together and see if we have anything exciting on Cycling News. Cycling News: Cavendish Row complete Everest. Enough with the Zwift stuff. Piccoli to climb Mount Royal for 12 hours in support of COVID-19. Okay, that's he just got that contract with Israel Cycling Nation. Sam Bennett with no racing, the whole structure will fall apart. Yeah, that's probably true. Reese describes Brailsford as selfish and puts trust in the UCI. Way to go. That's exactly one of the guys that you would expect to kind of be a douche about this, I suspect, because I'm like, Brailsford could completely be selfish, but is he a drug cheat like like you, Reese? I don't know. Alberto Contador dismisses predictions of mass World Tour team wipeout. I don't know why you dismiss that. I mean, if companies are struggling to make their own, let alone make it in on their own, let alone trying to sponsor a team, that doesn't necessarily see that things are going to change. What else we got here? CCC team riders fight back against proposed pay cuts. Well, okay, that's going to be tough, because as of right now, you're going to have teams that don't have any money, and if you don't take any pay cuts, I know it's going to be tough for you guys, but you guys, the riders. But if you don't have any kind of pay cuts and some give and take, it may be a problem. Giro d'Italia history: Indurain doing the Tour du. Indurain won the Giro one year, and he won the Tour the same year. That was pretty impressive. Just a little picture here. You've got first place in the Tour de France, Miguel Indurain. You have Tony Rominger, and I'm trying to Jalaska. I'm trying to remember the guy's name, but he was I think he was pretty much one and done. And you can probably say he got there by suspicious circumstances. I'm trying to remember his name. We'll do a little feature on him. And then lastly, tributes flood in for Pat Malik on social media. Pat Malik, writer. He was for Cycling News. Met him at Tour of California. Didn't really say much to him. Said hi. He was kind of an older codger guy, kind of walking around there. He evidently passed away. I had looked earlier, and I could not find what the cause of death. I do follow him on Twitter, and just recently he'd been out for bike rides, and no clue as to what or why. But too bad. Sorry to hear about Rowan Dennis. What else do we got here? Oh, so I just thought I would talk now real quickly, and then we'll head out here. Just a quick conversation and podcast episode. But I have started watching the Netflix documentary about the Movistar team. I'm trying to remember what the name of it is, but it's an amazingly well shot video footage. So far, I'm like 2 or 3 episodes in. I think it's only got 6 or 7 episodes. They're only like 25 minutes or so. And it is exceptional footage. Now, the tough part is, as someone who only speaks English, it's on, you're trying to watch it, and it's this amazing footage, slow-mo bike, and then this and that, and then, riders and interesting shots, the crowds and just amazing stuff you'd expect on a bike race movie type of documentary. But then you're trying to listen to what they're saying, and it's got subtitles. So you've got to kind of read the subtitles and then all of a sudden pause it and kind of look at what this amazing footage. So that's a little bit distracting. And it's also just, if you don't know, if you're just trying to get involved in cycling, it could be a little bit much because the way it jumps around. It starts the season talking with Alejandro Valverde, wins that he has the rainbow jersey because it follows him from 2019 season. And then it jumps around. It talks about Nairo, and then it goes to the Tour of Colombia, and all of a sudden, boom, they go to the end, the Vuelta with the Alejandro Valverde winning a stage at the Vuelta, and then boom, they're going back to an early season race. Now it's Carapaz in the Giro, and then they do follow Carapaz in the Junior and in the Giro. And it's also interesting to see some of the dynamics and the mentality of the different riders that want a shot because they have too many leaders. So even in the Giro, they go in there with Mikel Landa. He's the key guy, but suddenly Carapaz outdoes him by like 20 seconds in the prologue. And then Mikel Landa kind of comes back, and Carapaz has a bike thing. And then Landa has a bike issue. And Carapaz takes up off the road. They're supposed to be waiting for Landa, and then he wins the stage. A little bit of chaos, and that's what you have. And it's interesting to see kind of the dynamics that we've seen and it'll be interesting to see as this progresses to get to the end of the season, and especially the Vuelta. And if they follow through with the Vuelta and all the backstabbing and craziness that goes on there. There is some interesting comments by Landa where I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but you can just immediately already tell. Well, first of all, you can tell too, he and Carapaz both seem to be a bit fragile, but especially Landa. Landa seems to be, you've got to just kind of massage him the whole time. He's just kind of always worried and down and negative. And I was thinking, talk about it. Maybe that's why you're always seeing problems with Landa. An amazing rider, but maybe one that's maybe a little bit too much of a problem with trying to get through with everything. So I don't know. I'll finish that off and then get back to everyone, see how it is. So I don't know if everyone's getting out and riding. I've been able to get out and ride. Like I said, we're doing this time trial series. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you, Jason Graffath, for that. I would check into last week's episode to see if you want to check that out. A little bit of details of what we're doing here in Sacramento. And maybe for you might want to also just do something similar in your own place. Otherwise, this is Tyler Janke, Between Two Wheels podcast, 173rd episode. Check us out anywhere you can find podcasts. Between Two Wheels on YouTube, Between Two Wheels on Facebook. Join the conversation. And as always, thank you for joining Tyler Janke, Between Two Wheels podcast. Till next time.